The German submarines of World War II were some of the most effective machines used by Germany during the war. These U-boats took part in the Battle of the Atlantic, the longest-running battle of the entire conflict, and the U-boats formed an essential part of the Kriegsmarine's efforts. Because these vessels caused so many headaches for the Allies, capturing one was a huge prize if achieved. In today's video, we look at U-505, the US Navy's first successful capture of a German U-boat in World War II. If you enjoy this video and want to see more, hit the subscribe button. It's free and really helps the channel reach more history lovers like you. Submarines, known as U-boats, were hugely important for the German war effort. While the Army and Air Force waged battles across Europe and North Africa, their efforts often overshadowed that of the Navy. Known as the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy played a vital role during the war. Winston Churchill called on the United States to continue to supply Britain for as long as possible, indicating that without US assistance, the nation would surely fall to the Germans. Thousands of ships would make the treacherous journey across the North Atlantic, an area of ocean which was incredibly dangerous due to huge waves, seemingly endless storms, and freezing cold temperatures. But unfortunately, that wasn't the only issue Allied sailors would face. The Kriegsmarine surface fleet would see varying successes during the war. Their prized battleships, Bismarck and Tirpitz, were hoped to keep Allied navies, in particular the Royal Navy, at bay for much of the war. Unfortunately though, the surface fleet played second fiddle to that of the U-boats. In total, 1,162 U-boats were built throughout the war. They would be responsible for sinking over 3,000 Allied ships, these either merchant supply ships or naval warships. So how were these U-boats so successful? Teamwork played a vital role. These vessels would be sent out in groups known as wolf packs, and despite the North Atlantic being such a large area of ocean, the general area of the supply routes was known to the Germans. Therefore, sending out the submarines into these areas and having them covertly communicate with each other allowed them to contact the rest of the wolf pack if a supply convoy was sighted. The communication element was incredibly important, as each U-boat was armed with an Enigma machine. This cipher device would send encrypted messages, which could be intercepted by the Allies but not decoded without two things: an Enigma machine and the codebooks. But this is where U-110 comes into play. On the 9th of May 1941, the Royal Navy would seriously damage a German U-boat known as U-110 in the North Atlantic. With the vessel seemingly about to sink, German sailors abandoned it, but not before British sailors boarded the U-boat and collected the Enigma machine and its codebooks. This machine was eventually sent to Bletchley Park, where it would assist in decoding the German naval code. U-110 would sink the next day, as it was being towed back to Britain, so technically the capture of the U-boat itself wasn't successful. This takes us to today's story of U-505. Launched in May 1941, U-505 was a Type 9C class submarine. From September of the same year, she would be captained by Peter Zech. He and his crew began their first patrol in January 1942 and navigated the British Isles. The second patrol would see the vessel perform operations off the West African coast and sinking 4 Allied ships, as well as being attacked by Allied aircraft over the course of 86 days. The third patrol took U-505 to the Caribbean Sea, where she sunk 3 ships. On her fourth patrol off the north coast of South America, she sank a British ship before coming under attack from an RAF aircraft. The bomb dropped by the plane severely damaged the vessel and killed one of the German sailors. She would eventually make it back to France for repairs. After the previously eventful patrol, her fifth would be abandoned after she came under attack from British destroyers and returned to base after only 13 days. The next 4 patrols would be abandoned too after only a few days each. When at sea, various faults and issues were discovered. Dock workers fixing and supplying the U-boats before they left were working for the French resistance and were deliberately damaging the vessel prior to leaving port. In October 1943, on her 10th patrol, she was stalked by British destroyers and underwent a severe depth charge attack. This resulted in the captain, Jack, killing himself. After the attack, she returned to port. U-505's new captain was Harold Lange, who took her out on the 11th patrol, but returned to port early after rescuing German sailors, who went down after an Allied attack. This takes us to her 12th and final patrol. In May 1944, a hunter-killer group of naval ships left for the west coast of Africa after reports of U-boats operating in the area. This group consisted of the aircraft carrier USS Guadalcanal and 5 destroyer escorts. On the 4th of June 1944, U-505 was around 150 miles off the coast of Western Sahara when she was detected by the Allied naval group. Guadalcanal launched 2 aircraft to assist in the attack, while destroyer escort Chatelaine was so close to the submarine that her depth charges couldn't sink quick enough. Anti-submarine mortars were then used, and additional depth charges pushed into the water. After an oil slick was spotted by aircraft, U-505 surfaced badly damaged. Chatelaine and other nearby ships opened fire on the submarine. Lange ordered his crew to begin scuttling procedures before abandoning the vessel. As the survivors were pulled from the water, another vessel, the Pillsbury, pulled up next to the U-boat, where Lieutenant Albert David and 7 other sailors entered the submarine. With water flooding in, David and the others secured vital intelligence, but also managed to stop the scuttling. David would be awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on that day. Despite her damage, U-505 stayed afloat, and the decision to tow her to an Allied port was made. Initially, Pillsbury tried to tow the vessel, but eventually this duty was passed on to the much larger Guadalcanal. Due to European and African ports being infiltrated with German spies, it was decided a more covert location was needed. U-505 would be towed 1,700 miles to Bermuda, where she entered the Great Sound on June 19th. There, US naval personnel would look over her entirely, attempting to learn everything they could about German U-boats. To keep up the secrecy, she was painted in US Navy colours and disguised as a US submarine. But this didn't matter in the end, as within a year, the war in Europe was over. Following the end of the war, U-505 moved around a few times, before eventually being sent to the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. Today, as an open exhibit, people can see her and read about the incredible story of U-505, the German U-boat captured by the US Navy during World War II. What did you think about the story of U-505? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to expand your knowledge and join the growing Premier History community.